Hi Charlie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for being my first guest on Chit Chat with Kitcat and for agreeing to be on this podcast episode. This episode is going to be all about how to cultivate our power within our menstrual cycle, how to use each phase of our cycle to our advantage, and just going in a little bit deeper and understanding ourselves and us women during certain times of the month. So, yeah, thank you so much for being my first guest. How are you feeling about it?
Uh, Fine, actually. I wasn't I wasn't nervous at all, and I don't know why that is. Maybe I should have been a little bit more, but I think I'm in a good phase right now, maybe. So I wasn't nervous.
Good, good. That is perfect. I wouldn't want you to be nervous. I see you got your cat there as well.
Oh, can you see her? Luna. Yeah.
A little bit. Oh, bless her. So yeah, this is going to be all about ourselves when it comes to our menstrual cycle. So with that in mind, would you mind explaining a little bit about what it is that you do so we can all get a little bit of an idea about what it is that you specialize in?
I specialize in various types of yoga, really. My main practice is Kundalini yoga and has been for many years. I teach in Guildford and Bisley in two different yurts. I hold yin yoga classes, deep rest classes, and gong baths, and full moon and new moon circles as well, which are very much linked to what we're going to speak to about today, about the women and how we link with the moon.
That's something I
So,
definitely want to get onto later, for sure, when it comes to the moon, because I haven't I need to get into that a little bit more and understand that a little bit more.
yeah, I think as just in general, the world is too yang, and so actually, rather than kind of like a power yoga or a vinyasa, a lot of my classes are just to deeply rest and be more yin, be more feminine.
Which we all need so much more of, especially, I mean, I speak for myself here. I just need to just stop so much and I want to be doing everything all of the time. So definitely need more yin. Need to come along to your classes at the
Yeah.
So just talking about our cycles generally, I loved what you spoke about at the retreat. So just for a little bit of context for the listeners, Charlie did a fantastic retreat over on at Bisley a couple of weeks back, all about the women's menstrual cycle and what I've learned so much more, thankfully, in time for this podcast episode, so I can actually talk a little bit more about it. Than I would have. But I love what you said about how men have like a 24-hour cycle and where they'll go through everything that we'll essentially go through, but we'll go over it within a month. Could you talk a little bit more about that if you can?
Yeah, it's so unfair. So,
Yeah,
so yeah, men's hormone cycles are just 24 hours. So men day in, day out, it's just like the rise of the sun, of the way it's sunset, sunrise, sunset. It's just the same every single day. Whereas we as women go through typically, I want to say typically because it's an average of 28 days, the same as the moon. Men are the sun, women are the moon. It's the masculine and the feminine, the yin and the yang. So where it's over 28 days, we change phases every like pretty much day, really. So we'll go through all of them over in time and then repeat again. So we have like these 12 phases a year to
they
go
have it
through.
so easy, don't they?
It's so annoying. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is. Oh, how they have it so easy. What I loved as well is that you referred to each phase of the menstrual cycle as seasons. And I think that, I mean, since then, I've been saying to my partner, oh, yeah, I'm in my winter, I'm in my autumn, I'm in my spring. And I just think that's such a great way to describe each phase of the cycle. So I'm currently at the moment in my summer, I believe. And I just think it's a really easy way to describe it quickly of what phase you're in. So what made you use that? Was that something that you just thought was easy to refer to, or did it come from anywhere particularly?
Well, first of all, it's just easy to remember, isn't it? There's no way that anybody wants to learn all that different names of the hormones and says like estrogen is rising today. Like it just seems so weird. But it's through like various different teachings that I've had over the years that they speak about these inner seasons that you can kind of link to as women. Um, and winter there's a funny GIF on WhatsApp where it's like, do you watch Game of Thrones?
No, my partner's trying to get me desperately to start watching it, but no, I don't.
It's kind of like GIF where it's like winter's here, and which I send to my partner every time I bleed is. So winter is when you bleed, and it just kind of makes sense because you just kind of want to be left alone, just watch TV, not talk to anyone, just really have that time to be like introspective and reflective, and not go out and socialize because we don't really particularly want it at that time, do we? We just want comfort food and silence from everyone.
Just want everyone to leave you alone, please,
Yeah,
for a week.
go away. But, right now, I've just come out of winter. So the best way to explain it, I guess, you've got kind of like two phases of the cycle, really. It's you've got this like the same as the moon, this expansion, and then this contraction. And when we see the same as the new moon, for example, it like builds up to a full moon that we see in the sky, right? And then it goes back down again, back to a new moon. It's the same with our cycle, really. So when we are in that kind of winter where we're bleeding, it's this time of like a new cycle, a fresh beginning. That's the new moon. And as that builds up, we then kind of go outwards into this full moon, which is like, it's easy to remember because it's ovulation, orgasm, time that you want to be having fun with your partner, probably. And then you have this like real like contraction again when you're kind of in the waning phase, all the way back down to kind of like where it goes and back into a new moon. So then you can kind of split that up as well, where you go from like your bleed is winter, and then when you come out of winter you start having a little bit more energy. This is like the phase that I'm in right now, where you start to get like really organized and you just kind of end up doing kind of like spring cleans and stuff. Do you feel like that when you're in that
Yeah,
energy?
and what I find that I do, and I think I make the mistake of doing it, I start to feel really great as soon as I start to bleed, and then at the end of my period, so then I'll want to do loads, and I'll feel like I use up so much energy then, and then I come crashing down. I always come crashing down at some point. I feel like I almost get too excited that I'm starting to feel better again, and then I just ruin it.
Exactly. So like you need to kind of try and harness your energy as much as like we think that we can do everything. And I've kind of been a little bit like that today. And I've been like, I just need to slow down. Like
Yeah.
you want to get everything done as quickly as you can, but there's just no point because if you use all that energy now, when it actually comes to kind of the peak of your cycle in summer, you're just going to feel really drained. And then it's going to make the rest of your cycle even worse as well. So yeah.
Yeah, don't want to fall into that trap too much. Um, but there is also like loads of stigma, anxiety, and almost pressure about the luteal phase. So like autumn, and about how that's the worst phase. And I mean, to be honest, it is not the nicest of phases. It is my worst, personally. But also, you mentioned about how this could be a really good time to like get creative, to do just to sort of go into yourself a little bit more, obviously giving yourself permission to slow down. So yeah, so it's not all bad, is it?
No, I think there's a good side to every single phase. And with autumn, as much as we all just want to eat, quite frankly, rubbish, we're
Yeah.
so hungry. We are so hungry. We want to eat everything.
Yeah.
And we can be a little bit snappy and we can be a bit passive aggressive at times to our partners.
Oh
I
yeah.
think the best thing to do is actually just kind of take yourself off and be creative, because it's very rare that we probably have time in this world to just sit down and do drawing or painting or make crystal bracelets or any of those things. I think it's actually really therapeutic and a meditative way to kind of get yourself out of those kind of downfalls of that autumn phase. Really. Just take yourself off, have a breather, and then you might make something really creative and it's really good. I often think of like archetypes when I think of
Hmm.
the phase. So in autumn, I kind of think of Helena Bonham Carter. She's like a wild woman in the forest, all of that kind of energy. And it's really good in that phase as well to take yourself out in nature and really ground and connect back to the earth again as well.
Yeah, and
So
just I suppose spending some time on your own. Obviously, you want to be on your own anyway, but actually really just taking yourself away from people. Otherwise, it's never going to end well. But yeah, just having that literal one-on-one time with yourself and just connecting to yourself. Because you say as well, I know you mentioned about how your intuition's really high during this time. Obviously, it's quite, you can be quite irrational and everything, but actually, your intuition can be quite loud during this time.
Well, that's just when it's kind of starting when you get to winter, actually. I think in autumn, your inner critic comes out. Yeah. Which is why I think it gets such a bad rep, because you constantly just, you've gone from summer, right, feeling amazing. You've probably gone out with your partner. Everything that you wear feels good. Your makeup's great. Your skin's great. Everything's just great. And then all of a sudden it's like crash. Like anything that you put on, you don't like, those
Yeah.
days where you're like, no, 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 don't want to go out. My hair's rubbish, blah, blah, blah. You kind of go through all of those feelings. So I think it's this is why it's really good to take yourself off and just have a bit of
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it really is the worst feeling in the world. Everything literally feels shit.
I think every woman can relate. Like,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But I know we lightly touched upon hormones and how obviously that can impact the cycle length and potentially how you're feeling and your moods and emotions and everything like that. So what would you say generally advice or any tips or anything who's struggling maybe to start to understand or recognize their regular cycle? Is there anything that you would say to them who's having a bit of a hard time, like trying to understand themselves, their bodies, and what's going on, kind of thing?
I think, well, we call it menstrual cycle awareness, and I think the best thing to do if you're interested in figuring yours out, I mean, there's a ton of apps now, right? There didn't used
Yeah.
to be, but now that there is. I'm sure everyone uses various different ones anyway. But the way I did it is I was a bit of a journaler, so every day I'd write what day of the cycle it was, how I was feeling, just a few words. It doesn't have to be like this whole thing, just like 3 different ways that you're feeling that day or anything that came up. And then
Mm,
if you continue to do that, you'll start noticing a pattern. And then you'll start noticing that probably your period, I mean, there's so many variants in here, obviously, for people with various problems with their cycle. But even if you do have a problem with your cycle, you can still start to figure out roughly what the cycle is, because I'm quite lucky. I'm like literally every 29 days, like on the dot, not a
yeah.
very regular. But a lot of people have them at 21 days or 35 days. It can vary that much in between. Um,
Mm,
some people might have like a really short phase for each. Some
mm,
people might have a really, really long autumn, and that's terrible. Like for these people, is because some people ovulate early in their cycle as well. So it
mm,
does mean that they might have 10 days of autumn before they're then in their winter. So
mm.
it takes a while, because obviously we've got a whole month and to go through, and it might take months to figure it out. But then once you understand your cycle more, then you can start to kind of really harness that energy and see how you can change your life around your cycle.
Journaling and keeping a track of your cycle and what that looks like for you is so important. Like after your retreat day, I've been making note of kind of my feelings, my emotions, what I'm doing that day, and it's that has really helped me. And is something I wish I did back when I first got diagnosed with PCOS, because my cycles on average, whether it was a true cycle or not, but were like around 53, 54 days. And if I had had like just a very brief like feeling sad, I mean, to be honest, my hormones were all over the place. I felt like shit most days, but just to have that in would probably have helped. But I think they say when they go so long or so many days, you're not obviously ovulating clearly, so it's
Yeah.
not a proper menstrual cycle. I know they say the same when it comes to like when you're on the contraceptive pill and you bleed, it's not like a true bleed,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. But
Yeah. The fake lead.
I never even knew about, like, I always thought when I was on the pill anyway, I was like, oh yeah, I'm on my period now, and I thought it was my actual period. It's
They
wild.
just suppress your ovulation, basically. I mean, you still build up your lining and everything that you usually would anyway, so that's where your bleed is, but they suppress the ovulation.
Birth control, eh?
I know, I mean, I'm 36, and like we didn't know any of this when we were younger. And I find it amazing that I teach these retreat days and things, and everyone's starting to learn about it now, but like it would have been so helpful when I was in my teenagers.
Wouldn't
Like,
it? It would have been so useful to have known this knowledge we know now when we were younger. Like, obviously, it's important to have contraception, but to know the impacts of the contraceptive pill, how it can suppress so many things like within our body and just for our overall wellness and everything. Like, I probably wouldn't have used it, to be honest, especially starting at such a young age. It's wild, isn't it?
yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because they want everyone to be protected. So I
Yeah.
have asked the question of like, would it be possible to go into schools and teach young women this? But there's no way right now because they just want them to use condoms because of all various other things, STIs. But
Yeah,
they don't want people to be like, I know when my ovulation is, so go unprotected the rest of the time. Um,
absolutely.
Eventually they will, I'm sure.
Hopefully, because it's so wild. Because I think it's only like 2 or 3 days you can actually get pregnant during your entire cycle, anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's like around 5, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But like lead up to, so if you're trying to get pregnant, I mean, anyone who's trying to conceive, right, they're gonna be looking a lot into this anyway, and you start looking and delving into it.
Also, I found it really interesting too about I had a look at how with PCOS how it could be a link to the mother and everything that she did when she was pregnant. And I did a little bit of research on that because I thought, oh my God, I've never heard about this before. But there was so many things that came up. It could be to do with like environmental factors, smoking, lots of different things. But I thought that was really interesting because I think I listened to another podcast episode as well where someone mentioned it with PCOS. But I suppose things like that do make sense because you put a lot of pressure on yourself when obviously you're first diagnosed with a condition like, oh my God, what is it that I've done? But when it could be actually something completely with outside of your control, it's super interesting.
Because we don't know how our mothers felt when they were pregnant with us, right? They could have been going
Mm.
through so much stress, and some of us can't find that out. So it is interesting to, you can pass things through to your baby on so many different levels. And again, I think this is a new thing that people are starting to understand, is aren't they? Like there's so much knowledge that we don't know yet. I think.
Yeah, especially when it comes to stress, like it could be even something that they didn't even like do as such. It could have been their mental state. Like I can imagine their mental state could have hundreds of different effects on the child. So that's something to maybe consider too. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, going back to bleeding with the moon. So, like, obviously, what you touched on earlier. So, what would happen if? Because I didn't track last time about where the moon was at. But could that look different each month? Like, could it fall on a full moon, and then next time it would be like when the moon is? I think it's the waning or whatever. Does it look different each time, or is it like? Do you know to the T like with yours?
So if you've got a regular cycle, then
Mm.
you'll know where it lands because obviously the cycle of the moon is the same. So if we go like right back to tribal days, typically in all the ancient texts and everything, it says that women did bleed with the moon and that energy was very potent. So obviously all the women were all linked with their cycles because that's what usually happens when you are in a household with other women. It's definitely happened with me at university. My sisters, we've had lodges at our house before, link with them, it always happens. Have you ever had that?
Yeah, that's literally what I was just going to say next, actually, is that how when I was at uni, with all my girlfriends and everything, like we'd always think, oh, it's a myth, oh, it's just a coincidence and whatever, but we'd always be on at the same time. And I found that crazy. But then when obviously you said that actually, no, going back, X how many years ago, like it was a thing. It's what happened.
Yeah, like there's so much we don't know. Don't like in like we don't know how each other's bodies can like connect in that way. I don't think like on
Mm.
levels, and I think your energies do merge together. But anyway, the tribal women, they were obviously known as the healers, and the women were the most powerful in the tribes. And whenever they were on the bleed, you might have seen this, that they all went into what they called a red tent. And so they'd all go in this one red tent, and they do this at Glastonbury Festival and places like that as well. Actually, they have them that women can go to if they're bleeding, and you all
Oh,
sit
wow.
together. Yeah, you all sit together and you talk, and you're the wisdom keepers. So what the tribes used to do is the men used to ask the women all these like questions of various problems that they were having in the tribe. They'd all go into the red tent for a couple of days. They'd all go through it all together and then come out with the answers at the end, which I think
That
was amazing.
That's so lovely. That's so lovely. Well, it just teaches you like the power of community. And like when I know it's not directly related to that, but like when you're going through it, especially in your autumn, you think you're going through the worst time ever, and it's just happening to you, and everything nobody understands. And so that is just lovely. That would be lovely to have.
That's what I touched on retreat day that I think you were talking about, but your intuition's the highest at that point when
Yeah.
you're on your lead, and it's because your right and left side of the brain are their most equal. So it
Yeah.
when it comes to kind of like questions like that and you're all conversing, you've got a very equal perspective on two.
With all of that in mind, and everything obviously you know now, everything you've learned along the way, when it comes to our menstrual cycles, how to take advantage of each phase, if you could, what would you tell your younger self who just had her first bleed and was trying to figure it all out? What is one thing that you would
I'm sure
say
we
to
can
her?
all remember our first bleed. I was in year 7.
Oh,
I went to,
wow.
but then I had 3 older sisters, so I was very clued up, so it was okay. What would I tell her? Wow, their rage is okay. Their rage is absolutely okay, and it's
Yeah.
really good to let it out. Like the
Yeah.
worst you can do is suppress it, and I think even when we're in autumn, we have this tendency to be like, "Oh, I shouldn't be like that," but I also think that you should let it out because otherwise you just kind of hold on to things, and sometimes you're your most honest self in autumn. So I think it's sometimes a good thing. It's a really good time to kind of just check in with yourself and see how you really feel about some things.
Absolutely. Just let it all out. Don't hold back.
Just let it out. But I think it's a fine line, isn't it? Because like when you're, I'm sure you've had this when your partner is like asking you questions and you're just not in any position to answer them. Like Cole was asking me about shopping yesterday, and I think I was just at the end of it all. And I just went absolutely mad. I was like, don't ask me about shopping
Yeah.
right now.
It's like, can you please just stop talking?
But as long as your partner's kind of like, if you told your partner about this and all your different phases and
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think that's really important. Like, I think I actually spoke to someone at your recent gong bath on the beach about how they actually put in like on their calendar to help their
yeah,
partner. And I think that's such a fantastic idea because I'm like, look, I know I'm being a bitch to you today, but I'm in this phase. Can you give me some sympathy here? So it's just good for them too.
and this week is like when we should go out and have lots of fun together. That's really important. Like I think making sure you schedule your calendar according to your cycle is hugely important because quite often what we can do is in our summer phase when we see friends and stuff, which is a really good time to go out with girlfriends or go on date nights or do lots of things because you've got all of this energy to do it. Somebody can ask us to go out in the next 2 weeks and we'll be like, yeah, 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 yeah. And then 2 weeks comes and you're on your bleed and you're like, absolutely. Am I not going out today?
I mean, I always say yes to everything, but actually, it's so nice to just be able to say no. And so it just takes that pressure off a little bit. And it's like, you don't have to explain it either. It's just that you know that that's when you're going to be at your best. And that's all that's really important.
Holidays as well.
Yeah.
Scheduling in the summer,
Oh my
obviously.
God. Do you know what? That's actually just sparked off in my head. That's a really important thing to do because I just obviously book it whenever and I don't think about my menstrual cycle. But I'm actually going away on holiday in 2 weeks. And I think I'm actually going to be in my autumn/winter coming in.
I mean, it's happened to me before. Like, just everything. Going on holiday is stressful, right?
Yeah.
It is a little bit, isn't it? The to and go. And so I try not to schedule like holidays around there now. Make sure I'm in spring and summer only. And same with retreats that I hold.
Yeah.
Going to be in my summer, so I've got the most energy so that I can like hold the space all weekend. Because if I was in winter, oh my God, I don't think I could do it.
No, well, you wouldn't want to be there, would you? Because you just wouldn't be present. You'd be like in your head and be like, I just want to be at home. I don't want to be here.
Yeah, and you've got to hold the space for 12 people. Yeah, it's not good. So like
No.
I really learned to like sync my cycle with things that I'm doing now.
Yeah. Have you found that you've done that before, where you've had to have the responsibility of obviously doing a like a retreat day or something like that, and you've been on your winter or something, and you're just like, do you know what? I'm struggling.
Yeah, so me and Jess, we held like spring, summer, autumn, and winter retreat days together up until recently, and we're actually opposite.
Oh,
We'd always like it on one of them, it'd be like one of us was on winter, one was on summer, and then the other it'd be the other way around. So we like managed to do it so that whoever was in winter would do the restorative yoga, so it didn't like tax too much, and the other would do vinyasa, and then vice versa. So we had to kind of like make sure we were both prepared for what we had to teach that day. But like we couldn't avoid it, we'd always be on the opposite cycle to one another. So
yeah. Well, that's really nice that you could aware of like you're aware of that and you can make it work for you and then for everyone. That's good. That's one of the benefits of being aware of your cycle, I guess.
yeah, and the more you talk about it with your friends, then the more you can like just text back saying, sorry, not talking, I'm in auto.
Yeah, absolutely. For
I even
sure.
had one of my friends was meant to come to that social day that we had the other day, and she just messaged me. It's like, I can't, it's my first day of my bleed, not happening. Super blame.
Yeah.
Like, that's fair enough. I
Yeah.
understand.
No, it's totally fair enough. And you just don't want to socialize. And then it's the small talk and it's like you just can't be bothered. Your mind's just not there.
It's not there. Just wants to be in bed. Just wants to be in bed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on this episode with me, Charlie. If people want to get in touch with you or find out a little bit more about what it is that you do, how can they do that?
The best is my website or Instagram, really. Do I have to say that on here like this? Is that what you
Yeah,
do?
yeah. Say your Instagram handle.
www.charlieleeyoga.co.uk, and then it's just Charlie Lee Yoga on Instagram. It's just nice and easy.
Amazing. I love your new website, by the way. I have taken a look. Looks lovely.
Thank you very much. Very logical.